I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video settings throughout this meeting are turned off and set to audio only. Members, I don't need to remind you, but when you're speaking, please turn your microphones on, and when you're finished, please turn your microphones off. Item 2 this evening, apologies for absence.
Leader, I've had apologies from Councillors Smriti Patel and Nigel Bedford.
Thank you. Members, any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Minutes of the last meeting, can I take those as being agreed on item 4? Thank you. We then move on to reports of portfolio holders. Are there any additional reports? Councillor Balcombe.
Thank you, Chair. As I presume everybody is aware now, because they must have had their bins emptied this week or last week, it was the first week of TVS. And the first thing I must say is over the week, TVS managed to empty 125,146 bins. Exactly. And the number of missed collections was 96. So when I took this portfolio over, nearly 2 years ago now, where we were sitting at 5,000 at the end of the week, it's a great improvement. That is actually 99.92% of bins cleared. I think it's amazing. I think what it does show is how the staff of EFDC and the staff of TVS, two separate bodies, can work as a team. And as you know, we've just had 2 Saturdays of training sessions on the new hub at North Weald, well, the temporary new hub at North Weald. And I think Steve's got a little video here of what went on that day, haven't you, Steve?
I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Strategic Director at Epping Forest District Council. This is the culmination of around 2 years' worth of work to set up a brand new company, Terra Verde Services, to deliver waste services across the Epping Forest District for residents. So behind me you'll see some of our brand new trucks, and we've got a range of people here today who are transferring from the old waste company, doing a bit of an induction, getting to know the new trucks, getting to know the site, doing their loading training, so it's been really exciting today.
Ray Balcombe, Epping Forest District Council, Cabinet Member for Contract. Today on the airfield, we've had an induction course for the new crews. Obviously this includes health and safety, them getting kitted out with all their new uniforms, getting used to the vehicles and the way we're going to operate.
We've got around 32 refuse vehicles. We've got our street sweepers of varying different sizes as well. There's some reversing training going on just down the site, some loading training behind me, and it's really good to see our logo on the doors of the new vehicle. I'm really hopeful that Terra Verde Services is going to deliver an improved waste service for all of the residents across the district. So a service that is reliable and can improve our recycling and food collection across the district so that we can really make a difference to the climate.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think that's have to pay tribute to all the staff and everybody, whether they be in TVS or they're part of Epping Forest District Council. We're all one team in these type of things, and it goes from start to finish with this project, right down to the design by Rebecca of the logo, which was first class, and in-house, to all the work that's gone in from a whole officer team to make this work, and of course to Ray, who's worked tirelessly as the cabinet member to be on site and actually keep a close eye on things as well. The results of last week, if they continue, will put us in a really good position for the future. Of course, the real test, as we know, is all that Christmas wrapping paper and food. I just thank everyone for what they've done. It's been first class. The real tester for success for me was last week. I didn't get one complaint about rubbish collection. And when I spoke to my cabinet and fellow colleagues across the council, no one knew the difference. That to me is success. A smooth handing over from Biffa to ourselves, the new team, moving forward. What a good start. 1 week in only. Let's hope we can continue that as we move ahead. But thank you very much. And Ray, can you pass on our thanks again to the team that you've been working with? And I know Jen's online tonight. All our team have been first on this the whole time and delivered something we can be proud of. Thank you. Okay, moving onwards from a good piece of news. Item 6, which will be public questions and request to address the Cabinet.
Chairman, we don't have any public questions, but we do have a request to address the Cabinet from Mr Gardner.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for attending, and please address the Cabinet.
Good evening, members of the Cabinet. My name is John Gardner. I'm here representing the Bowesfield Action Group, a group of Ongar residents that are directly affected by the West Ongar Concept Framework Plan, hereinafter referred to as the Plan. My objective tonight is to convince the Cabinet that the draft plan should not be endorsed until revisions that I'm about to explain are made. Before I start, I'd just like to make it clear that any page numbers references that I make are to the supplementary committee agenda relating to the agenda point 9, West Ongar Concept Framework Endorsement Appendix B. It's slightly confusing on the page numbers, as there are two sets of page numbers on the document, and I don't want anyone to get confused. I will be referring to the higher number, Appendix B page number. Whilst the current draft is an improvement over the previous version, and I thank all those concerned for their efforts, a number of fundamental issues remain. As time is short, I'll focus on three key issues: drainage, vehicle access, and building heights. First point, drainage, page number 19. Ongar is built on a high ground between the Cripsey Brook and the River Roding, and within the confluence of the two being south-east of the town centre. During heavy or prolonged periods of rain, the roads around Ongar become flooded, and on a number of occasions in recent years have become impassable. The plan clearly shows the development being served by potential SUDS drainage systems, sustainable drainage systems, SUDS, which are outside of the allocated site area on farmland in the green belt. It seems highly likely to me that this will contravene any future planning regulations. To further compound this, it also shows a potential connection from the SUDS to an existing ditch. The ditch in question drains into the Cripsey Brook and already has to be cleared by residents to prevent it overflowing into their properties. Any additional flow into this ditch will serve to exacerbate the flooding risk to the local residences and, as already explained, the wider area around Ongar. For the reasons outlined, all SUDS and necessary drainage must be contained within the allocated site boundary, and runoff from the site must be no greater than at present. Second point, vehicular access, page 16. The plan shows two vehicular access points, one to the north on the A414 and the other to the east on the High Street Ongar. This is contrary to the local plan site-specific requirements, which clearly state that the two allocated sites, ONG R1 and R2, that make up the West Ongar concept, must be served by a single vehicular access. The proposed access onto the High Street is hampered by numerous constraints necessitating the following: the removal of the existing bus lay-by, meaning buses will have to stop on the High Street carriageway with consequential congestion and increased risk of dangerous overtaking manoeuvres. The existing bus stop has to be moved further south on the High Street to a more dangerous location that is on a bend and will obscure the view from the proposed crossing point when the bus is stopped. The removal of trees with tree preservation orders. This will impact the environment and the setting of the locally listed Bowes House and Great Stony Park and contravenes the local plan site-specific requirements. Constriction in the site means that the primary road to and from the High Street access would pass within feet of the gardens of existing residents in Great Lawn and pavilions. High levels of passing traffic having a negative effect on the amenity and the mental health. A single vehicular access on the A414 provides a better solution that is local plan compliant and all of the issues above can be avoided. The Ongar movement strategy states that the majority of traffic from the plan area will commute to destinations to the west of the site. A further benefit of a single vehicular access on the A414 is that overall less traffic from the plan area would have to use the already congested Four Wants roundabout. Getting close to the end. Third point, building heights. Ongar is a rural town and the West Ongar concept is a residential development on the edge of settlement. The plan proposing buildings up to 3 stories which are out of character and introduces the issues of overlooking, and in the case of Bowes House impinges on its setting. The Ongar neighbourhood plan is clear in policy ONG ED1 that new building development should complement existing rural townscape character in terms of height, scale and massing. 3 stories is clearly not appropriate to the site and does not comply with the neighbourhood plan. Building heights should be mostly 2-storey with a small number at a maximum of 2.5 stories. I realise that councils are under pressure to meet targets for residential building, but I hope in the last 3 minutes, or just a bit more, I have managed to convince you that the West Ongar Concept Framework Plan requires further revision and that the relatively short delay that this causes will be beneficial to all concerned in the mid to long term. Once again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and I was happy to let you continue there because it was a really good detailed statement, so thank you for that. Councillor Williamson, would you like to comment now or comment when we get into the substantive?
I'm quite happy to do that now in case Mr Gardner wants to
Yes, of
away,
course.
but
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr Gardner, for your questions tonight. Also, thank you for all of your questions during the process. I mean, some people see it as we might be upset by that, but that's really what we need, people to engage with us and tell us what they think. I think you had 40 points on your original sort of summation of the framework. Some of them were on the Ongar neighbourhood plan, which isn't before this cabinet tonight. Quite a few of your points have been taken into account in the changes that have been made on the way through this. On the 3, I think you mentioned drainage first. That was covered in item 9 of your original comments, and the officers have responded. It may be helpful if I read that out. The framework proposes a high-level sustainable urban drainage system utilising the topography of the site based on a combination of swales, attenuation basins and rain gardens with potential off-site drainage solutions on the adjoining field to the west, which I think is the point you were making. A flood risk strategy will be worked up in greater detail. This is just the beginning sort of stage, the concept framework. There is an awful lot of work to do between now and the detailed planning permission, and I'm sure that that will be seriously taken into account and looked into. Your second point was access, which...
Can I just make a comment on that, or do you want me to wait till the end?
Sorry, we can't go back and forward. It's literally just for Councillor Williamson to respond.
Sorry, it's not a debate, but I'm quite happy to meet you and talk these things through. Site access, again, has been covered in items 3 and 8 of your original questions. I gave an undertaking, I think it was at full council, the last full council, in regard to all of the local plan sites, that at no time would we ever implement a plan that did not have safe access. I understand your point, but I think what has been worked up here separates the two as far as vehicles are concerned, and that's probably a good thing, but does join up for pedestrians and cyclists. So I think that has been covered, and building heights again was covered in point 4 of your comments. And the officer's response is, or was, sorry, the framework proposes mainly 2.5-storey buildings, except to enhance placemaking across the internal garden squares and also behind established green buffers, the A414 and the High Street. There are 3-storey buildings to the east of the site at Tolpuddle House and within Great Stony Park, and at the Four Once roundabout, building height reaches 3 to 3.5 stories. Again, this will all come out in the detailed planning, but I'm hoping that answers your questions. If not, as I say, I'm quite happy to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming in this evening. Okay, members, let's move forward on to the next item, which is item 7, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you'll be aware, that 2 officers from TfL attended the Overview and Scrutiny Committee last, which was on the 29th of October. They underwent scrutiny, a range of questions, which some have been submitted in advance by members at the meeting. Further issues were raised on the night. Whilst TfL could provide some generic information at the meeting, we were advised that detailed responses and key contacts for the stations in the district would be provided in writing. So thus far, we've not received anything from TfL, but the officers are chasing that up. And once we receive information, we'll make that available to members and the public. All I can say is really is the next meeting, tomorrow, 19th of November. And, I hope that members of the Cabinet will be able to attend scrutiny on the 19th of November. That's it, really. Yep.
Thank you very much. That's a very helpful update and a very good meeting with TfL as well. I thought the number of the points were got across really well to them, and I'm sure they've taken back the thoughts of the committee. Members, any questions for Councillor Baldwin at all on that report? It's not really to be reopened, it's just for noting. Is everyone happy to note that report? Thank you very much. Then if we move on to the next item this evening, which is the housing repairs and maintenance policy. I'm pleased to say this report is regards to the 6,000 homes that we still have in council ownership within Epping Forest, which we should be proud of, and we maintain our stock to the best of our ability. And this sets out our repair responsibility and priority timescales for the future. This report has gone through the scrutiny process. It's been to the select panel that's relevant to it, and it has been discussed in detail back in October. And those amendments that they requested have been made to this report. Members are happy to take any questions in the absence of Councillor Bedford, or in fact, officers will be happy to take any questions on behalf of Councillor Bedford in his absence. Members, it's open to you. As it has been gone through all the necessary processes. In that case, I'll take that as being agreed. Thank you. Then we move on to item 9, which is the West Ongar Concept Framework Endorsement. Councillor Williamson again.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry, I've just dropped some of them. I think that's the notes for the previous bit. But yeah. This report is to bring the final South Nosing Concept Framework plans to Cabinet for endorsement. If I could shortcut it all and call the South Nosing Concept Framework Plan the framework from now on, it would be helpful. The development of the framework responds to the adopted Epping Forest District Council local plan, where the need for a concept framework plan is identified. The South Nosing Master Plan is allocated for a minimum of 93 homes with a mix of tenures, types and sizes, landscape-led approach to the implementation of green and blue infrastructure, and improved safety measures along St Leonard's Road, and safe movement for pedestrians and cyclists. The site has also been designed to address the current flooding issues experienced by residents along St Leonard's Road. The framework has been subject to public consultation and stakeholder engagement. The applicants have been consulting with the Parish Council and organised a members' briefing as well as a public exhibition. The framework was also presented at a quality review panel. The framework has been developed collaboratively and has been reviewed by the local planning authority and Essex officers. The feedback from the quality panel, members briefing, officers, and all of this was taken on, officers was taken on board by the applicants to help shape the current plans. Therefore, I'm reading the wrong one.
No, you've done it the other way around.
Continue, Councillor Williamson, and we'll go back to Ongar afterwards.
Oh, well done. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's why I dropped my notes on the floor and didn't put them back in the right order.
That's normally my trick.
Therefore, I recommend the South Nasing Concept Framework Plan be formally endorsed in order for it to be taken into account as an important material consideration in the determination of future planning applications and to inform pre-application advice, assessing planning and any other development, management and implementation related purposes relating to the site. Thank you, Chair. Apologies for changing the order.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson, and thank you for testing us this evening. If I could just ask a question, first of all, from the Chair. This is a really helpful document, and I have to say, I think some of the engagement we've been doing with communities is first class. In particular, last week we met with communities from Nasing and Roydon in regards to that particular area, and the linkage between the local issues and the master planning, particularly with the South Nasing piece, where we've got highways issues that are involved as well. And obviously these master plans need to be very mindful of some of those issues as part of the planning process and the requirements for infrastructure. Are we satisfied that's the case, Councillor Williamson?
Yes, Chair. That has been always taken into account and always will be. That's one of the reasons for doing it this way.
I think it's just worth, particularly following the gentleman's statement on Ongar, I think it's really important to show that we are going that extra mile with people to listen and work with them. And I think that's what's coming through to me more and more now, and particularly after our very constructive meeting last week with Roydon and Nasing Parish Councils. I thought that was really helpful. So thank you for that. Members, any questions? Okay, silence. So are we happy to agree this particular master plan? Thank you very much. We then move back to number 9. We move back to item 9. I can see Councillor Dadd, she's anxious to speak on this one. So on the West Ongar Concept Framework endorsement, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. This one does start off West Ongar Concept Framework, so that's good. It might be a bit of deja vu, some of it, but there we go. This report is to bring the West Ongar Concept Framework Plan to Cabinet for endorsement. The development of the framework responds to the adopted Epping Forest District Local Plan, where the need for a concept framework plan is identified. The concept framework plan areas in 2 separate ownerships, making a master plan key to ensuring cohesive development. The local plan allocates the site for a minimum of 234 homes. However, following the adoption of the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, it means that a lower number is proposed. Approximately 180 homes are proposed to ensure delivery of high quality development. The master plan proposes a landscape and townscape-led design and approach. 2 safe access points have been agreed in principle with the County Highways Authority. Developers have also collaborated with site Ongar R4 to the northeast to draw up a movement strategy to ensure safe movement for pedestrians in the wider vicinity of the site. The 3 developers will deliver improvements directly, securing delivery and allowing the works to come forward sooner. The West Ongar framework has been subject to a quality review panel and public engagement. The framework has been developed collaboratively and has been reviewed by local planning authority officers, Essex Highways. Feedback from the quality review panel, councillor meetings and public engagement has taken on board to help shape the plans. Therefore, I recommend the West Ongar Concept Framework Plan be formally endorsed for it to be taken into account as an important material consideration in the determination of future planning applications. It will also inform pre-application advice, assessing planning and any other development management related purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I have 2 of the Ongar councillors here this evening, so I will give them the first opportunity to have their say. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the developers and our case officer for enabling a very early engagement, and I think that's made a big difference to input some of the interesting parts about Ongar which makes us distinctive. And I'm very pleased that they've taken on board Ongar Neighbourhood Plan and also Ongar Design Guide. And the input and the engagement they had very early on, they have taken on board the concerns and things that local people wanted changed by and large, and it's very pleasing to see the changes. One thing that does concern me that perhaps the case officer will be able to look again about, and the developers, is a little bit more protection for some of the existing homeowners in Great Lawn and Pavilions, because they have very short gardens and they will be impacted. But by and large, they have done an awful lot of work on this, and I'm grateful that they have involved council at very early stages. I'd like to also thank John Gardner for coming and raising the residents' group's concerns about the access in particular. And I note that the original local plan site allocation recommended just the one site. And I know that it's difficult if you've got two landowners coming together, but there are dangers involved with all this access onto the high street, and I'm wondering whether there is a possibility that should things change further down the line, that they could still have just one access from the A414. My third comment, and then I've got one small question, is about infrastructure, and particularly road infrastructure. Ongar has got most of its allocated sites coming forward very, very shortly. We've already heard about the one on the other side of the Four Wants. This is going to be approximately, or just under 600 homes. It could be up to 1,000 vehicles at peak times per day without even the North Weald. So Ongar residents are very worried, not just about keeping the traffic flowing, obviously, and I note that this particular design has looked quite carefully at pedestrian safety, but what we feel in Ongar, a lot of residents feel, is the dangers of trying to turn right onto a busy main road. We've got 3 A roads that come through Ongar, the A414, the A128 and the A113, and that is a real worry, and the longer people have to wait to get out safely, the more they're likely to take risks. And I know from talking to other authorities and being involved with Planning Advisory Service Conference that Essex Highways isn't alone in what we think of as quite a low bar to ask from developers. But Ongar isn't the only one. The Thornwood has problems, and I'm sure there's others in the districts as they come forward will be worried about some of the safety aspects of the road. My question really is for the Cabinet and for the portfolio holder, Councillor Williamson, is whether we could demand more from road infrastructure and safety from the developers, with working closely with Essex Highways, and whether there could be some sort of working party or something to look at it. We don't want to be waiting for further fatalities and serious injury for us to be able to do something. And also to actually ask for improvements before occupation of any of the sites. I do recommend endorsing this framework. There's a lot of work gone into it. There's a lot of changes since it first went to engagement. But I would like to actually add that if the developers could agree on one access, whether they'd look at it again, and also to see if the EFDC as a body can work and put some more pressure on ECC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dadd. Councillor Kesker, would you like to make your points now?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I thought Mr Gardner did a very good job in presenting the main issues, all of which I would agree with, in fact. When we were working on we had workshops many years ago before the local plan was agreed, and a lot of the matters he's brought up tonight were the ones that we were discussing back then. In terms of, I must say first that I'm in favour of the plan, and I would certainly be voting for it. I think it's important to move things on. However, when we get to detail, there are still things which I think need doing. Drainage. We'd never heard of attenuation ponds until a few years ago, and I don't know whether this may well be the answer. We're all aware that the Cripsey Brook floods on the 414, and we often get cars literally floating along the road and have to be recovered. So that's one question for when we get nearer the planning application. Access. I was of the original impression that there was only going to be access onto the 414 and that there was nothing onto the high street. The high street location is very difficult. It's on a bend. There's a bus stop. You'd have to move the bus stop. I'm not sure where you'd move it to. And if you say the buses would have to stop in the middle of the road, that's something else. We do occasionally wonder quite how closely Essex highways look at some of the buildings. But I certainly think that is a problem, and we do need a really safe access onto the 414 for particularly vehicles turning right. It's the same problem as the one on the other side of the road, on the Chelmsford side. And I think we need to look at that really seriously when we come down to applications. In terms of building heights, well, we had a bit of success in Greenstead Road with building heights and types of buildings because of the neighbourhood plan. So I'm sure that will be taken into consideration when we look at the actual planning application and the pre-app situation. So the answer is I'm very much in favour that this be passed. We need to move ahead with it as quickly as possible. But there are those three items I think are the most important. And I will add just one more that has been mentioned. We looked at one or two other sites around Donga and we talked about green walkways. In other words, something to protect existing houses, particularly with small gardens, from the development. And I don't know whether this is possible here. I don't think we're at that stage yet. But I think we ought to keep it in mind for when we get to the pre-app and onto an actual application. But apart from that, I'm certainly in favour and will be voting for it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for the questions as well. On the two access points, I think it's fair to say the local plan also suggested a larger number of houses. We've moved on since the local plan, and this is the concept that's come forward. I reiterate my point that we will not have any scheme without a safe access. I think I agree with your comments on Essex highways, but I think we have to make a sustained effort to make sure that they play a very heavy role, not a low bar, a quite high bar on these particular sites. We're all aware of the problems, and nobody wants serious injuries, as you mentioned. I totally agree with you. Yeah, and when it comes to the actual building of these areas, there is a concern about traffic that there is on any development, because it's all additional traffic at that point, and some of it's quite heavy. But after the initial groundworks, normally, I'm sure it will be the case here, the works are phased over quite a length of time. Builders generally will only build the number of houses at any one time they can sell. So I don't think we're going to get our 600 homes as quickly as I'd like. But again, I think with the three sites, we need to work seriously when contracts are let with the contractors to work out a plan. I remember when the Cheshunt football ground was done, I think somebody worked out it was, I can't remember the number, it was 2,000 lorry movements or something. But none of those lorries were allowed anywhere near the site within the window of their actually being needed on site. So all of these trucks were miles away and then coming in as they need. we need to work on something like that if these 3 sites are being constructed at the same time. And we have the same problem in North Weald and many of the other sites. Demand from developers, highway contributions, I can assure you that our officers will go for the maximum Section 106s they can. I'm not sure when the timing of these developments are actually going to come into planning, but if it's after the SIL, then they will be paying into that pot as well. I hope it's before, which means we can get on the ground earlier, but if it does come after, then that would be handled there. Attenuation ponds, I think, have been around for quite some time. I think when I did York University in 1960-something, they built a huge lake. Like an attenuation lake it was, actually. The bus stop, I don't think it's beyond the wit of man that we work something out on that during the planning stage. Safe access I've done. I think I've covered the points you raised. Green walkways is a new one to me. Maybe one of the officers could mention if that's a possibility and what they are. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just take the green walkways point. There is buffers between the proposed homes, particularly on the really sensitive edges around Great Lawn, the pavilions and Marks Avenue. And those have been increased following the consultation process as well. And we will look to, through the planning application process, put conditions on so that those boundaries, those trees and that planting can be maintained and so residents can't remove it from their rear gardens. But as to walkways coming through there, I think it would be better, and residents would probably prefer if nobody additional was walking behind their rear gardens, and it would be probably more beneficial actually if it's just rear gardens facing other rear gardens rather than having more people publicly accessing the rear. I think that was the. Is that your point, Councillor Keska?
Thank you. Yes, it was. I think it was just it was an idea that may well make life easier for existing residents, but that's in for the planning stage.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other members? In that case, can we agree the recommendations? Thank you. Okay. We now flip forward to item 11, pavement licensing policy. Councillor Keska.
Thank you, Chairman. Pavement licensing was introduced as part of the government's emergency response to the COVID pandemic in 2020. Its intent was a simplified and fast-track route for pubs, restaurants and cafes to obtain temporary permission to place furniture, including outdoor tables and seating, on the highway, allowing them to increase their outdoor capacity safely, quickly and at a low cost. In July 2020, Cabinet agreed the current pavement licensing policy and scheme of delegation, and this has remained unchanged. On the 31st of March 2024, Government commenced new legislation making pavement licensing permanent. The permanent regime retains the key features of the 2020 legislation intended to streamline processing and reduce costs, but also incorporates some key changes detailed in the report to ensure long-term sustainability of the model. In response, it has now become necessary to amend and update the policy to reflect legislative changes and updated guidance, and Cabinet are recommended: 1, to adopt the revised policy; 2, in line with government recommendation, agree that licences will be granted for a maximum of 2 years unless there are good reasons for granting a licence for a shorter period; and 3, agree that further consultation and Cabinet approval will not be required on the pavement licensing policy, where amendments are required solely to reflect future legislative changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keska. Members, any questions? No? Councillor Williamson.
Just one statement, really. I think it's a really good piece of work, and thank you to the team. I think we're fortunate to have such good officers on this particular subject. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. Members, are we happy to agree? Thank you. Then we move into any other business on item 13, the Q2 Budget Monitoring Report. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the officers for putting together this report. Sorry, it was submitted slightly after the deadline for publication of the agenda. This is the Q2 report and is a report for noting. I'm sure everyone's read the report with a fine-tooth comb, but you'll see that it represents a fairly stable picture. We have healthy reserves, good collection rates. We still have a forecast underspend of 0.131 million. This is slightly down on what was previously projected, but still a projected underspend there. We have got areas of significant pressure with overspends, particularly around planning applications, which has been a continuous problem in recent years. And it's probably worth highlighting as well the issues we have around the costs from planning appeals, most significantly Chigwell Nursery, which we lost at appeal, and that's £141,000 out of the budget and falling as an overspend. There are, however, several areas of underspend, including in IT and transformation, regulatory services, and also customer and community, although that's largely accounted for with the transfer of Epping Forest Museum into a trust. So that's largely what that covers. You'll see also from the report that the HRA is in a very healthy position, which is good news. And I'm happy to take any questions, and I have got officers here for support also. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman, and thank you for the report. I think it is a very useful report, and I think the extra information included on performance indicators is helpful as well, so thanks for that. There were three things I wanted to sort of raise or ask about. I mean, firstly, I think the sort of change to the repayment schedule from Qualis won't be a surprise to anyone who's sat in these meetings in previous months. And I can see the council sort of mitigated its position with the late charges and the higher interest rates. Obviously, that has not got an effect on Qualis, who potentially don't have the money they thought they were going to have. I did want to ask about what plans there might be to revise a business plan, and so members can understand what actually impact that has to Qualis on the ground. The second question was about the IT underspend that Councillor Whitbread mentioned. And that was simply, is that a sort of an ongoing underspend that means the money will go back to reserves next year, or is it a phasing thing, which means that money will just need to go into next year's budget and be spent then? And the third thing was about the housing repairs overspend. I mean, I thought the sort of a big driver for transferring housing repairs to Qualis was it was going to be sort of cheaper or more efficient and to transfer some of the risks to Qualis. And it's not that clear from the report why that overspend's arisen, and a bit more information on that would be helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And I will pass over, if he's happy, to my colleague, Councillor Matthews, on the Qualis business plan and issues around Qualis. I would say I was actually surprised to see on housing repairs the increase in voids. I don't think we've got any housing colleagues or the Cabinet member here this evening, but I will get a written response back to Councillor Whitehouse on that, because having had that in my portfolio, Qualis actually did a very good job last year in getting voids into a good place. So I was surprised to see that, and Andrew might want to clarify that as well. But yeah, I'm going to pass over to Councillor Matthews after Mr. Small. Thank you.
I think in respect of voids, I don't think it's necessarily the number of voids, but the amount of work required to each void. And we're having ongoing conversations with colleagues in Qualis about the standard of repairs that we undertake to those voids and how we can reduce it. I think it incorporates garden clearance and all sorts of bits and pieces, and I think a number of our properties have been left in a worse condition than we anticipated, which is pushing up costs in that area.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, you're completely correct. It is having an effect, and we've got an updated business plan that will be coming. I'll be presenting that very shortly. Perhaps Mr. Small can remind me when. December. On our December meeting, I'll be updating. So yeah, we're in the process of assessing that. And as you identified, I've kind of kept you up to date with things where we are so far. So yeah, we will update in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. And Councillor Whitehouse also asked around the underspends. I believe some will be carried over, but I will pass to Mr Small to clarify.
Yeah, I think mostly in ICT, I think the underspends are more about late delivery of activity as opposed to permanent reductions in costs, unfortunately. So an underspend in the current year, but won't be repeated in future years largely.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure whether these are best directed at Cabinet or at overview and scrutiny. They do refer to perhaps a level of detail which may not be answered tonight, but as Mr Small's here, perhaps he can. I've got 3 points. I'll take them in order. The first line was there was a projected variance of 98,000 under the service line for Chief Executive. Could you please enlighten me and fellow members as to what that is likely to be for? And if, as I assume, perhaps wrongly, that it's for cover in illness, the question is there not any key man insurance in place for absence due to sickness? Perhaps we'll take that question first.
Councillor Wiskin, can we come back to a detailed response to that? Because there's information we couldn't give you this evening on that.
Thank you. I fully understand that. Secondly, again, this question perhaps strays a little bit beyond specifically the finance. The planning development overspend or projected variance is rather large. The question was, and unfortunately Nigel Richardson is no longer in the room, do the higher costs predicted cover the promised training for councillors, planning officers and the recruitment of new planning officers, as was discussed in the back end of the PAS report findings, which was targeting better informed decision making? But in reference to this, I did watch the first planning committee meeting under the new structure, and I was rather dismayed that the first item, which was the significant TPO tree in Epping, which in my view was rightly refused, there was no site visit, which would have answered most of the questions which were raised in the debate. And as I recall, and I may be incorrect, I thought it was a stipulation that site visits were mandatory for each item on the agenda under the new structure to give the better informed decisions.
That's a clever way of using finance to get to planning, and I have to admire your guile at managing to get onto the planning issue. I don't know whether Councillor Williamson wants to try and give some detail.
I think I can on some of it. Yeah, I believe the current budget includes the additional training that was called for under PAS. The overspend is a lot less than it has been in previous years, so things are seriously improving. I mean, for years we had the fixed planning fees, which have now been increased. So things are changing in the right direction. But it's a service we have to provide at the table of charges that we're given, and almost being, well, actually on the edge of London, almost being in London, it is a huge challenge to make that come in on budget. I think it's always going to be an overspend. The TPO tree and the site visits have always, it's always been the policy when we started that there would be a site visit for each site unless there were some that the chair decided weren't necessary. And I think we all can see this tree from miles away. We know this tree, we drive past it, we see it. I believe some members, without informing all the other members, actually had a visit inside the flats, which is nothing to do really, the amount of damage inside the flats or the cause of the damage is, but the amount of damage inside and inspecting the inside is really not part of our remit. It was a TPO that we were looking at. So site visits are at the discretion of the chair and will be arranged as necessary.
Thank you. I make you right on the tree. Certainly anyone who hasn't driven past that tree hasn't lived in Epping Forest, I should imagine. And I think the other, what we need to look at this evening, I think the most shocking figure, of course, is that appeal cost. 141,000 is every reason why we had to change the way that we do planning in Epping Forest and make sure that we bring it up to a professional level. And Councillor Wiskin, you're quite right to bring up the issue of training, because you want members on those committees who have undergone the training and taken planning seriously. I think that goes without saying. Members, you've got the recommendation to note this report, and Councillor Wiskin.
Sorry, I did have a third question.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
At the last full council meeting, which unfortunately I was away at, Councillor Bedford alluded to reports being compiled and further work being undergone by third-party organisations regarding information for the clean air zone. Could we be enlightened as to where there is any budgetary allocation or budget lines for the implementation, which was promised in 2025, or the fending off of an implementation in 2025? Where is it in the budgetary plans?
Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take that, although my colleagues might want to add to it. What I would say, first and foremost, this council will do everything within its power to make sure we never have a clean air zone in Epping Forest. We've been absolutely clear about that from day one, and I actually I want to make sure we have a firm statement on that. But Councillor Wiskin may be aware that there was a PAG established, which is a portfolio working group, where different suggestions and ideas were shared between planning officers and councillors, and I believe there's ongoing work and research with the planning department. There's not a set piece of work, but if funding was needed to avoid a clean air zone, I'm sure we find ways to fund it. But may I reiterate, there is not going to be a clean air zone in Epping Forest. The County Council oppose it and this administration oppose it. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. There are reports being done, and we ask for them weekly. And Councillor Kesker, Councillor Bedford, who's not here, have a weekly meeting with the directors and senior members of planning. There's an awful amount of work being done, and we hope to be able to report at the earliest possible time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, now we've strayed completely away. Oh, Councillor Kesker. I hope this one's on the money.
No, no. Can I stray as well? It was simply to answer perhaps a small point from Councillor Wiskin, that it is the intention and it is in the plan that a substantial training programme will be run on behalf of the council for councillors, for chairmen of planning committees and for planning officers, and also we are planning to include town and parish councillors, particularly their planning committees as well. So all of this is in hand. I'm not sure when it's all going to come through, but we are working on all of that now.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think particularly, I know that the town and parish councils will welcome that training in particular. Having met with one of our local parish councils only on Friday, I know they're looking forward to receiving that, because there is some confusion, and unfortunately one or two individual councillors have tried to create that confusion, particularly around the Ongar areas and in the villages. But I know you're aware of it, and we need to bring those into line as quickly as we can, because those towns and parishes do a brilliant job helping us through the planning process. And I know we had a meeting last week with Royden and Nasing, really positive, and it just shows when we work together we get better results for Epping Forest, which is what we're all about, isn't it? Members, we've strayed well and truly off the grounds of finance tonight. Can we agree and note this report? Thank you. And with that, I close the meeting. Thank you all very much.